Mussolini rules a Nazi puppet state in the north until he's killed near the war's end in Europe 2 years later. 1960. John F. Kennedy faces critics who question whether being a Catholic should disqualify him for the White House. The Democratic presidential candidate tells a group of Protestant ministers in Houston,
I am not the Catholic candidate for president. I am the Democratic Party's candidate for president, who happens also to be a Catholic. I do not speak for my church on public matters, and the church does not speak for me.
Kennedy becomes America's first Catholic president when he narrowly defeats Richard Nixon that fall. 1953. Wedding bells for a future White House couple as Kennedy marries Jacqueline Bouvier in Newport, Rhode Island. 1977. In South Africa, black student leader Stephen Biko dies while in police custody. His death triggers a global outcry against South Africa's racist apartheid regime. And 2003.
Because you're mine, I walk the line.
In Nashville, singer Johnny Cash, the man in black, dies of complications from diabetes. The country music legend was 71. Today in history, September 12th. Ed Donahue, The Associated Press.
Why the Syrian civil war is also causing hardship for its neighbors. From APM, I'm David Brancaccio with the global perspective on business and economics. Secretary of State Kerry is set to meet today with his Russian counterpart to talk about diplomatic approaches to ridding Syria of chemical weapons. There's also a humanitarian crisis brewing in neighboring countries trying to absorb refugees. Marketplace's Jeff Tyler reports it's taking a human and economic toll.
Senator Lindsey Graham was on CNN this week where he recalled a recent conversation with the King of Jordan.
He's told me and Senator McCain, I've got 600,000 Syrian refugees, 40,000 new Syrian kids in Jordanian schools, and he's hanging on by a thread.
The king is under pressure because of the economic strain. Cortland Robinson is with the Center for Refugee and Disaster Response at Johns Hopkins. He says Jordanians see Syrians receiving better assistance than they get.
People say, why are we not getting anything? We're absolutely either destitute ourselves or we're even more impoverished because of this influx.
Aid groups like Mercy Corps try to strike a balance, says spokeswoman Cassandra Nelson.
We certainly are focusing in on the refugee population, but we also help the Jordanians that are suffering.
Sharing the humanitarian relief with poor Jordanians could help keep tensions from escalating further in an already volatile situation. I'm Jeff Tyler for Marketplace.
There's a new fight that could have enormous implications for climate change in the American coal industry. The Obama administration reportedly wants to sharply lower the carbon dioxide coming from new coal plants. The Wall Street Journal says the only way to meet that standard is to use emerging new technologies, such as sequestering CO2 underground. The coal industry will see this as too expensive, and lobbyists and lawyers will be on the way. Now let's check the numbers. In London, the FT 100 is down 0.1% right now. S&P, Dow, and NASDAQ futures are all down right now. The British government plans to sell off its majority stake in the world's oldest postal service, the Royal Mail. It could raise more than $4 billion. From London, Marketplace's Stephen Beard reports.
Almost 400 years old, the Royal Mail has proved the most difficult state-owned asset in Britain to privatise. 2 previous governments have tried and failed. Even the great privatiser, Margaret Thatcher, balked at this one. But the present government has got a deficit to cut, and the Royal Mail needs investment. Email and texting have eaten into its letter delivery business, and it must beef up its package service. The UK Minister for Business, Michael Fallon.
There are investors out there who are ready and able to invest in this business, and today is the day that we're giving them the freedom, giving Royal Mail the freedom to go out there and raise the money it needs.
The Royal Mail's 150,000 workers will be given 10% of the shares, but the main postal union fears big job losses in the private sector, and it warns that the daily delivery of letters to every part of the country could be at risk. The union's threatening to overshadow the float with a national postal strike. In London, I'm Stephen Beard for Marketplace.
Do you enjoy the music we play between stories? Visit the Marketplace Music section to browse playlists for all of our programs and to buy those songs on Amazon. A percentage of each purchase goes towards supporting our programs. Find more online at marketplace.org/music.
5 years ago this weekend, Wall Street giant Lehman Brothers went bust. It was the moment that we looked into the financial abyss, then fell in. This week, we're looking at the lessons. Today, the subprime mortgage frenzy that led to Lehman. At the height of subprime, there were offices across the country devoted to one thing, selling subprime loans. Many of those loans were frauds. Loan officers altered pay stubs with whiteout and targeted people they knew couldn't pay, then sold bundles of these things to big investors such as Lehman Brothers. 5 years later, where are these lenders and bankers? Marketplace's David Weinberg looked into it.
It turns out that many of the employees at the bottom of the subprime food chain were already criminals, even before they started peddling subprime mortgages.
One of the disturbing things that we found is that a large number of the people that work in these places are probationers, parolees, very low-paid people that are just essentially, picked out of, Craigslist ads.
Elizabeth Henderson heads the real estate fraud unit of the district attorney's office in Orange County, which was home to 4 of the 6 largest subprime lenders in the country. When the market collapsed, many of these low-level employees who worked in boiler rooms, cold-calling homeowners, lost their jobs. Some went to work in other fields, but others simply found a new way to fleece homeowners.
And so those people then morphed when that market collapsed into loan modification mills. And we receive complaints every day about loan modification fraud. So it continues.
The DA has successfully prosecuted a handful of people involved in fraudulent lending. From 2011 to 2012, the DA made 15 convictions. Together, those cases involved 545 victims, whose losses totaled $173 million. But what about the people higher up the food chain, the Wall Street participants who packaged and sold fraudulent loans? Where are they 5 years after the collapse of Lehman Brothers?
And the answer to that is that overwhelmingly they are simply where they were before, except that they're much wealthier.
William Black is a former bank regulator and an expert in white-collar crime. He and his colleagues at the Federal Loan Bank of San Francisco were instrumental in exposing corrupt members of Congress during the savings and loan crisis of the 80s and 90s. So it made sense that he was asked to testify before Congress in 2010. He explained to the Committee on Financial Services in detail how Lehman's collapse was the direct result of fraud.
It had an entire operation, Lehman Brothers, called Aurora, that specialized entirely in making liar's loans.
And Black pointed out, Lehman was the largest purveyor of liar's loans in the country. After his testimony, he was surprised that none of the committee members asked him any follow-up questions. To date, there's not been a single criminal prosecution of any Wall Street executives involved in the financial crisis. I'm David Weinberg for Marketplace.
We're accumulating all our Lehman coverage at marketplace.org. It has been 5 years, but it doesn't seem right to call it an anniversary. In New York, I'm David Brancaccio with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
Oh, Taco Bell, product placement with Taco Bell. Injarito Macho Burrito.
That's the thing. What are you doing here?
I've come to kick ass.
Blue Moon.
High-level talks on Syria's chemical weapons.
It's complicated, and it's difficult.
Deadly Colorado flooding.
Displacing as many as 500 people.
Estrogen, key for older men.
Men and women, maybe we're not so different after all.
Good morning. I'm Steve Kathan with the CBS World News Roundup. Secretary of State Kerry is in Geneva. His meetings with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov come at a crucial time in the Syrian crisis. CBS's Margaret Brennan in Geneva says Kerry will consider the Russian proposal for Syria's chemical weapons.
He brought a team of around 30 arms control experts and diplomats who will meet with a large Russian delegation later tonight. And we expect 2 to 3 days of very intense, very technical talks. There's not a lot of trust between the U.S. and Russia right now, and Secretary Kerry wants to see if his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, offers up all of the nearly 1,000 tons of chemical weapons, production facilities, and munitions that U.S. intelligence believe the Syrians have.
This is Peter Mayer at the White House. As those Geneva talks get underway, the U.S. and Russia are jockeying for world opinion. Writing in the New York Times, Russian President Putin challenges the U.S. to proceed with caution on Syria. He rejected President Obama's insistence that the Assad regime used chemical weapons. Senior administration officials this morning say Putin is posturing. The White House views the Russian leader as fully invested in the proposal to get rid of Syria's chemical weapons.
Russia is now putting its prestige on the line.
And spokesman Jay Carney pointed to Moscow's track record.
Russia has played the role of blocking international efforts thus far to hold Assad accountable.
So, Steve, this is why the White House views the U.S.-Russia meeting in Geneva as a big test of Moscow's seriousness about diffusing the crisis over Syria.
CBS News senior correspondent John Miller joins us now. John, take us through what might happen in this complicated process to secure the weapons.
Well, it is complicated. You're talking about missiles or rockets with sarin, VX, or mustard gas. So if you are going in to dismantle and make those weapons go away, you have to ask, well, are they on the missiles? Do we have to dismantle the actual weapons and then the material, the gas? Or are they in storage areas in regular containers? But even that's a complex process. That means you have to bring people with the expertise on how to destroy this material.
And, John, time is of the essence here.
Some analysts believe that this is a giant game of diplomatic rope-a-dope. You were what could have been days away from a missile strike. Now what you're in the middle of is a set of negotiations about what to do, and then logistical talks about how to do it, and then discussions about who will do it, and then the actual process of doing it. And that could be weeks, that could be months, and if you're Syria, you just brought yourself a lot of time to continue to fight the rebels, try to turn the tide in this war, and frankly, you're not feeling very threatened in an imminent way.
Well, Turkey's prime minister says he believes Syria's President Assad is indeed buying time with his chemical weapons promises. Syria's rebel leaders are more explicit. One rejects the Russian plan and says government leaders should be put on trial in Syria. Reports say the rebels have received new weapons shipments from the U.S. months after they were promised by the Obama administration. Well, now that the pressure's off Congress to deal with Syria, attention turns to domestic money issues. CBS's Bob Fuss on Capitol Hill.
The four top leaders of Congress are meeting this morning to try to find a way forward on the latest budget mess, with deadlines approaching to fund the government and raise the debt ceiling to avoid default. House Republicans are pushing a new strategy to tie everything to the health care law. House Speaker John Boehner.
We're going to continue to do everything we can to protect Americans from this harmful health care law.
But Boehner doesn't want to shut the government over that and has already run into problems with members of his party who do. Bob Fuss, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
2 people are dead. Others are stranded in their homes after relentless rain triggered flash flooding in Colorado's Boulder County. Some rescues are underway. In one area, an earthen dam gave way to make things worse. Jenna Davis lives in the city of Erie, Colorado, where floodwaters in some places are a foot high.
It's a disaster. If that retaining wall comes down, which we've been told it's pretty dangerous that it might, we're in trouble.
At the University of Colorado Boulder, 400 students have been evacuated. Some have posted video of surging water in dorms and parking garages. In Northern California's Shasta County, officials found a body inside the perimeter of a wildfire that's destroyed 37 homes. Fire official Mike Weitzman says it's still a very dangerous situation.
The actual fire area is still evacuated for safety because there's still a lot of power lines that are down and the fire has not been mopped up. A plan has been developed that people should be all back into the fire area by Saturday night.
The fire has scorched almost 8,000 acres in and around Happy Valley, about 2 hours from Sacramento. Dead fish are floating in Hawaii's Honolulu Harbor because of a 230,000-gallon molasses spill. Boater Lexi Ray says it's a mess.
And I've already seen tons and tons of the dead fish floating around.
The molasses leaked from a pipe at a coastal plant and will likely stay in the harbor until tides wash it out to the open ocean. In Arkansas, 12-year-old Callie Hardig is home from the hospital. She's just the second known American survivor of a deadly infection caused by a brain-eating amoeba. She got it after a July visit to a water park.
I'm lucky to be alive.
Be careful when you go to water parks.
Doctors say Callie survived because of an early diagnosis and experimental treatments, including the use of a breast cancer drug. Well, low testosterone has been blamed for a lot of things as men get older. Now a new study says levels of the female hormone estrogen could be a factor, too. We're live with CBS's Heather Bosch.
You've heard the commercials.
I have low testosterone.
Today, men with low T